Hello everyone. I recently had the opportunity to read Bakemonogatari, the first in the Monogatari series. I recently read Monogatari before this, which is the prequel written after Bakemonogatari. The author says you can read in whatever order you like. I'm here to tell you you should really read Bakemonogatari first. It establishes the principles, morality of the characters. It makes Araragi much more sympathetic, and it has a lot more dialogue and character establishment to it than the really plot-focused and speedy Monogatari that's meant to flesh out the spring break. Bakemonogatari is a very indulgent anime trope light novel that likes to take all of the trends that were happening at the time it was written and bundle them up and give them to you in a really sarcastic, quippy, dialogue heavy text, with Araragi and Sugihara, the girl who he crushes on and the girl is crushing on him, stealing the show with their snippy, sarcastic dialogue. And more than Monogatari, I can easily understand why Araragi wouldn't be willing to commit to a relationship right away, because Sugihara is trying to get him in trouble. She's constantly playing power games with him, and she's constantly being snippy. So it's even though he kind of likes her, it's hard to see when she's messing with him or not, because Sugihara is totally the kind of character who would be like, Araragi, I was thinking that we could do something a little more fun and with a little less clothes. Then he'd be like, what? And then she'd be like, I knew you weren't just hanging out with me because we were hitting it off. This was always sexual with you, wasn't it? This was always sexual with you, wasn't it? Sugihara, I would never think of such a thing. You would never think of such a thing with me? Are you trying to call me ugly? What? No. Araragi, come on, I need a challenge here. And that's the kind of relationship and dialogue you can expect throughout the text, and it's just a blast to constantly keep listening to. I also think that the supernatural elements in the book it's kind of fun to just drop them in. I don't think it's much of a spoiler to say, Araragi goes up and says, oh, I see that there's a supernatural problem. And then Sugihara's like, how do you know that? And he's like, oh, because I'm part vampire, and the class president is also part cat demon, but she doesn't like to talk about it. And just kind of dropping it in there when the prequel established what actually happened, it made me laugh so hard. Oh, don't worry about it. I'm part vampire. What the fuck? There's a lot of good within this text. It also establishes that Araragi has a principle where he will consistently help anyone in need, and that he always favors life for the hope that it brings, which retroactively explains some of the decisions that I thought were very boneheaded in Monogatari. I still have issues that he didn't respect another person's opinion, and things kept getting handed to him, and he kept kind of stepping on people with his morality, but I at least understand that he has a consistent principle of always go towards life, and that he's very consistent with it, and that makes me respect his character a little more. He's still hilarious, he's still kind of dumb, and just everything in this text makes the character more relatable, and it establishes his dynamic where he is sexually interested in other people, but he's not super into it like he was in Monogatari. And yeah, overall, I would recommend this book to anyone who's a huge anime fan, who really likes heavy dialogue, and likes two people being snippy. A romance, I would say, is the ultimate thing that's happening here, but really just good indulgent dialogue. But there is one thing that I need to state, which I researched to see if I would continue reading this. The first book, or each book, is separated into two sections. It's really kind of two short stories per each book, where each short story could be a novella, and the two just happen to play off one another with one consistent thread. So it's kind of paranormal detectives, I guess, would be what the book is trying to accomplish. And then each book has two cases. The second case, Araragi helps out a middle schooler, and it gets fucking weird. So, she starts treating him like a big brother, but she's really doesn't want him involved, and they start fighting, biting, and wrestling. And the character is not a pedophile. But it kind of feels like the author is shoving a little bit of lolly in people's faces in case they're into it. And that might be enough to turn people off. It was certainly enough to make me research to see if this ever happens again. And if it does happen again, I'm not going to keep reading this series. If you are okay with that, for the dialogue, for the character interactions, and let me get to the point. There's nothing explicitly in the text about it. It just kind of feels like it's the author's thing. If you can deal with that, and you can deal with the author kind of feel like they want to have their cake and eat it too, then I still recommend this series, with that huge caveat. If you're in the mood for a romance or a paranormal investigation with two characters who are just rivals, constantly going at it, kind of in a power contest of sarcastic quips, and you can deal with some kinks that might be more than a little taboo, then I think you would enjoy Bakemonogatari. But I would understand if you wouldn't. And with that, goodbye. I believed in the rational till I met you. Now I believe in a supernatural meant for two. You and I, supernatural, you and I, supernatural, you and I, supernatural meant for two.